like you say, a friend of a friend of a friend, the underground deer mafia, apparently. Get these things. I don't know. But, generally at Myers, they just don't sell the one deer to your average guy.
Hey everybody, this is Jason Hamlet, and you are listening to the IHUNT Podcast. The IHUNT Podcast is dedicated to bringing you guests from all over this great country who share the same passion as you do, the great outdoors, and more precisely, hunting and fishing. Our guests will range from experts to people just like you and me, each of whom will be able to provide us personal insight into the tactics and strategies they use in their neck of the woods. From hooks, hooves, wings, and webs, we will cover it all. As always, subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. And don't forget to rate and review. That means a lot. Thanks for listening, and let's get to the show. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the show. This is the IHUNT Podcast, episode number 025, and we are going to be talking deer decoying with Steve Hinson. Okay, before we get into all that, we have a huge announcement here at the IHUNT Podcast. This season, during the deer season, lasting the whole duration, we are going to be doing a best buck competition. That's right, you listeners are going to have your chance to submit your buck harvest for the season. And there are going to be several great prizes lined up to be awarded to the winners. There's going to be more details to come. We're looking to release it this weekend, or we release the prize list and how to enter and all the details. So be looking forward to that. It's going to be a ton of fun, and I can't wait for the interaction and to see all your guys' picture and to get rid of some of these great prizes we have coming in from some good sponsors. So it's going to be a ton of fun. And also, to support the show, the best way to do that right now is to go to our webpage, www.theihuntpodcast.com, and use our Amazon link at the top of the page for all your Amazon purchases. You know, it's very simple. It's a very easy and efficient way to support the show you listen to. I know everybody out there uses Amazon, the convenience of it. You're sitting around, you run out of something. It's easy just to pop online, go to Amazon.com, and pick up what you need without ever leaving the house or ever changing out of your pajamas. So if that sounds like something you do, then all I'm asking you to do is to make one extra click and go to www.theihuntpodcast.com. First, click that Amazon link and use the Amazon page just like you normally would, and I'd appreciate it. Help the show out, and we'll get about 5 to 10% cut commission back from everything you guys purchase. So it would be a great way to help us out and support the show. All right, guys, let's get on to the show. Like I mentioned earlier, on today's show, I have Steve Hinson from Sentinel Decoys coming on to talk all about deer decoying. We go through all the different situations you may find yourself in this season and how a decoy can help and how to efficiently use that decoy to maximize your success in this upcoming season. So I learned a lot. It was a ton of fun. So without further ado, enjoy Steve Hinson. Everybody joining me on the phone today from Sentinel Decoys, our IHUNT Podcast decoy expert, Steve Hinson. Steve, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Jason. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's nice. Thanks for taking some time to make the second appearance on the show. I know a lot of people are excited out there to learn a little bit more about how to use a deer decoy in the field. You know, last time you were on, you kind of went over how you developed the decoy, but, you know, deer season's right around the corner. Maybe those out there who are considering using a decoy and thinking about it, let's try to give them the rundown on some of the basics and how to properly use a deer decoy in the field.
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing I think about deer decoying is it's a lot of fun. If you haven't tried it before, it gives a different angle. You know, it's sort of a thing where if you're out in generally open areas, especially, that's where decoying kind of got going, is in big fields, places you're seeing deer at distances and they can see you, you know, that type of thing, you know, where if you put a decoy out, they can see it. Real close in woods, you know, it's less the chance of being an effective tactic there just because they can't really see it from a distance. So, you know, that's how it all got started, and that's how I got started in it. And if you got areas like that, you might want to give it a try.
Yeah, decoying deer is actually, it's fun because, you know, a lot of us out here, we turkey hunt as well. And, you know, one of the best things and the funnest things about the turkey hunt is the dance you have with that animal. And I think deer decoying, when you combine it with some other tactics like calling and rattling some antlers and maybe using a little sense, it kind of elevates it to where you're getting that feel of that harmonious dance that you have with nature, where you're trying to really trick an animal and really kind of have that conversation with them. Not a real conversation, but you know what I'm saying, in the woods, the nonverbal type of communication.
Yeah, you know, it's like using a lure while you're fishing. You know, it's just something that adds that. You know, like I fly. You know, occasionally there's nothing better than, you know, catching a fish on, you know, a fly I tied myself. And that's really, that whole luring in and just that you're really fooling, it just adds a whole different thing as compared to just your basic knowledge about trails and sign and sitting in the right place and winds and everything like that. Just gives it a whole nother dimension. And can go with, you know, I was just talking with Turkey Man.
Oh, yeah.
Weeks ago, and we're having a conversation, and, you know, and we all know about him and turkeys, but he's like, if I'm talking to a turkey, you know, I, you know, expect people kind of to be looking at me, you know, type of thing, and where he can see something. You know, if I'm talking, he wants to see something too. So if you're out there doing some calling, and maybe you've had some deer come in, some drug calls, they just don't come in close enough. Sometimes, you know, a little added something is going to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I want to get into a little bit is putting everything together for people out there to be successful if they decide to use a decoy this season. And there's a lot more to it than just throwing that decoy out in a field and hoping one comes into it. So we're going to actually get into all of that. So let's first start by you kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's go a little bit further. And what types of properties are conducive for decoying deer? Well,
of course, the big fields. Obviously not a cornfield that's got corn in it, but if they saw, you know, a bean field, I think bean fields are probably, you know, the best place to put them. They could, you know, they stick up above the beans and, you know, it's a great place. You know, the feed's right there, obviously, and that to me is probably the best scenario. But, you know, open areas in woods, you have somewhat of an open area that, you know, some trails combine. You know, I see a lot of guys, you know, with their, you know, blind stuff on Twitter and that, and they're setting up over these little open areas. And, it's something, you know, consider that openness is kind of a requirement, though, just for the fact that deer can see it from a distance. That's really the main thing.
Yeah, like when you're decoying, you're really what you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize the amount of deer bring into one area, and the way to do that is to have that decoy as visible to as many trails and as many travel routes as it possibly can be. But I mean, with that being said, I think I like how you alluded to the fact that, you know, an open clearing in the woods may be a place to consider. And another place you may want to consider when using it in the woods would be like on a long logging road, or like I know on the property I hunt, there's a gas line that cuts the property in half, and it's about 20 yards wide, but it runs the length of the property. So I mean, anywhere along that, you know, any deer crossing that trail and happens to catch it in one direction and sees it, you may have some luck that way, even if, like I said, so if you don't have the luxury of a big field in your area, there may still be an opportunity to use that decoy.
Absolutely. I got a great story to go with that.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm going to give you some stories tonight just about situations where I wish I had a decoy. And that's a great one right there. People that know me a little bit on Twitter know that I work on a golf course, and we built this golf course 20 years ago. And when we were building it, there was these old 2 tracks going down, and we were doing the logging, and so there was this one fairway we had, and all the trees were down and everything, and this 2-track just run right into that. And at the other end of it, they were bulldozing the fairway, getting it ready.
Uh-huh.
So I'd been bow hunting for 3 nights, and I kept seeing these deer cross that 2-track through this little cut. So the second night, I had moved close. I was at the top of the hill I started, and then I moved down the second night. And then the third night, I went and sat right on that first tree where that 2-track went right into all them cut-down trees. I'm sitting in this tree. And same action, same time of night. Here comes the deer down through there, but this time the big boy's with them. You know, nice, beautiful 10-point, just a beautiful deer. But he turns on that trail, and he heads right at me. I'm sitting on basically the ground, jumping on a log, and he's just walking right at me. I got my bow up, and I'm hiding behind it. I'm hiding behind one limb, and he kept coming and never really looked away and kept coming. He wasn't more than 10 feet away from me. And when you're on the ground and you're looking at that, that's something to see, really. It really was. And I had a little doe with him, but I just couldn't draw. I couldn't move, you know, he just stayed to me. Now, if I would have had a decoy anywhere down that path, it would have got his attention probably before he got there, you know, and it would have been upwind. So he would have saw it and circled. And in almost all your good scenarios with your decoys, you're facing the wind, the decoy's upwind, the deer circles between you and the decoy. That's the main goal. So you get that nice broadside close-up shot.
That's right.
And in this situation, if I would have had a decoy anywhere down that road, he would have circled around like that and had all his attention on the decoy, not just coming up there, you know. And he eventually turned. He turned to a nice little doe, and so once he got behind me, he probably gave me the loudest snort that, you know, I've ever heard in the woods. Once he caught my wind behind me. So, but I just couldn't get the shot. And, you know, and that's what it's all about. Yeah,
I mean, not only would it may have got his attention off of you, so you've been able to draw, but and maybe present you with a better shot. But that could be another advantage of using a decoy in the woods is if, let's say, if you're set up somewhere and you only have maybe 2 shooting lanes on the stand you're hunting out of, maybe propping a decoy up on one of those shooting lanes may encourage that big buck to stop it right in your shooting lane, or at least come towards it. You know, if you're limited in the amount of directions you're able to shoot out of a certain stand, it may increase your odds of getting that animal to walk in front of that your shooting lane that you need.
Yeah, and just getting his attention on something else. Back, you know, many years ago, I'm a little bit older guy, but, you know, a few years ago there, we used to just hang like a pie pan up in a tree, you know, maybe 30 or 40, just something that would catch the deer's attention, just something that stuck out in the woods, anything to get their attention, you know, on something else, you know. And in this case, you know, that's what you're using, that decoy. You really, if they buy into the decoy, they're really focused on it.
Right.
So if they're on it, they're on it.
Right. And just kind of wrapping up here a little bit. Also, like I mean, you kind of touched on something with the wind. I think another great use for a decoy would be if you have a situation on a field where you know they're traveling this route, but you're not able to hunt it efficiently because of the predominant winds, maybe, in that it just limits you on your placements of stands to be able to get a shot. It could be a use as a tactic to pull the deer off of that trail and into an area where you have the wind advantage.
Yeah, it's so many scenarios like that, especially when you're talking distance. And deer are funny in fields, too, and you have to remember this. They get out in a field. The wind isn't nearly as important as it just was because they can see so much. Just being around a golf course for, years and years, I've watched deer go run down a fairway with the wind. They just go right with it, and there's less attention on wind direction as they get out. You think about deer coming out in, field and feeding, they're wandering around, it's, their eyes are more, out in the open, they can see, it's like a Canada goose, they tend to come into ponds where they can see a distance, there's not a small little pocket with a bunch of cattails. They like being in areas where they can see a distance, and that's where they're common at. So when the deer gets out in the field, them eyes, they're a lot more of their protection.
Yeah, but I would say that big monster mature buck we're all dreaming of chasing, he's trusting his nose a little bit more than anything else on his body. So.
Well, can I tell you another story? I got another story. Got a great story.
We love stories here.
Ohio. It's Ohio story.
If it's about Ohio State losing this weekend, and that's a story I don't need to hear.
You brought it up, not me.
Act like you're not sitting here waiting in the weeds, waiting for that opportunity to jab at me at one time through this podcast. So I beat you through it to it.
Yeah, that's great. But I want to say, there's a town actually up north there. It's on the west side, Greenville.
Yeah.
A little bit north of there. About 15 years ago, I went down there. The only time I've been to Ohio hunting. A friend. It was a situation where I was into dogs and showing dogs and stuff. So there's some mutual friends from showing dogs. And it ended up being an arrangement where, like, the wives arranged this hunt. Ray and Ray knows, you guys, you want to go hunting together. The wives arrange the hunt, So me and the other guy, we get our licenses and go down there. Yeah. He's got 240 acres, prime real estate, had a lot of nice racks on his wall. Nothing monstrous, but a lot of, $120, $130 on his wall, and he was a serious hunter. And he had a great piece of property there, and we get down there and hunt for 4 days. And it's right around 2nd, 3rd of November, just the worst weather in the world. 20-mile-an-hour winds, 20 degrees, and a little bit of snow all the time, 4 straight days of that, So that didn't go so well, so I got an invite to come back. So this time I take my son down there, and it's the complete opposite. It's 4 days of 65-degree weather, just beautiful, again, deer, really, until the last day. So I'm there the last day, and I'm on the back of my property, about as far away from his core area as he could put me. But anyways.
He's a smart man.
So I'm sitting on the back corner of his property overlooking this naked bean field, which was probably, it was almost a mile wide, huge field. And I'm just sitting there, and it was like, I'm going to leave in an hour. So I'm just like, a little bit of frustration coming out. So I bring up the rattling antlers, the grunt call, and I just start beating them up, both of them, just as loud as I could grunt, just as much as I could rattle.
Was this a peak rut, or was this?
At this point in time, and this is another situation where I sure wish I had a decoy, but again, we're right there at about the 4th of November. We might have been a little bit later, about the 6th. We went a little bit later that time. And so anyways, we're down in Ohio, man. Yeah, so I, rattled him up, but he had walked up here out of this big valley and stood there and looked. Of course, I had to stop moving. I had to quit rattling. I had to quit moving and just watched him. But he's just one of these giant bucks. Now, if I would have had a decoy, I think I could have drew him in. But, that's just one of those things where if you think about it, and you guys think about it, some of these scenarios where you've seen bucks at distances, and maybe the decoy would have made the difference.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be your advantage in certain situations and certain times of the year, for sure.
Yeah, I'm one that, I think if you think about, I think we're going to start talking about those, some of the phases we're going to go through here a little bit.
Well, yeah, we're going to get into that, but
we're going to get into that. But, most phases you can decoy of some, there's different scenarios certainly for decoys. But, you can decoy most of the season, really, one way or another.
Right, you for sure could, but I think my only concern with using a decoy throughout each of the phases could be you could train some deer on your property, if you understand. Maybe a big buck gets hip to it because he sees it a couple of times. You know what I mean? That would be my only concern is overusing it on the same property throughout the season could make it less effective when it's needed.
Yeah, I have seen a couple things with that. I've seen deer where you see the same buck, and I've seen them where they just kind of walk by it in the early season and stuff, but then turn around and maybe 2 days later, now they're almost on it. I mean, they are curious animals for sure, and are right. I mean, obviously not going to be able to use a decoy time and time again,
right.
And train, educate the deer. There's no question about it. But just because they saw it one time and maybe at a distance and weren't interested in it, doesn't mean they won't be the next time. Also, it just so sometimes their mood changes a little bit as we progress through the season. There's almost daily changes going on out there, and we have to adapt to that. And the deer's mood changes, or he makes this kind of bigger circle, in different times, and he'll come back 3 days later. He's in a totally different mood now, and so things can change.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess what I was thinking is if a deer, if a mature deer or that buck that you're chasing does for some reason get spooked or pick something up about your decoy, and you end up seeing him running off with his tail up for something from the decoy, which it happens. Maybe pursuing that deer further in the season with that decoy may not be the best bet.
Absolutely. There's something to be said for educating animals.
That's right.
For sure. It's they're smart. I would hope the scenario works out where if you get him in that close, if he actually was to spook from it, especially a big buck, if he spooked from it, then he was probably pretty close to it. Either that or your decoy isn't doing the job. Maybe it was turned the wrong direction. He just didn't like, the look of your decoy. He didn't, he felt it was wrong, or something like that. Certainly, that type of thing, But I think if you were to, even turn around your decoy the other way and he saw it from a different direction, he might think totally different about it again, So there's a lot of ups and downs to that for sure.
Yeah, but you know what? You don't have to worry about that. If you just bought yourself a Sentinel decoy, then you're not going to have to worry about that buck turning around and getting spooked by it.
Yeah, that's what you like to talk about. But there's something to be said for the type of decoy you're using. Right now I got my antelope decoy out there with a Boomer from Transient Outdoors, and he's checking it out there in the rugged country doing for that. We kind of come upon the conclusion that it's not a great stalking decoy. And there are different kinds of decoys to use for sure. There's like 8 billion kinds of decoys in this world, but it's not a great stalking decoy, He's going to use it around the water holes. He's going to use it for the rut. He's got some plans for it. To take it out into stalk with it as compared to, some of the other stalker decoys, that's probably not the best thing. it was also, when I built it, it wasn't really took into account you're kind of hiding behind this thing.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I just found out about that now, too. Like, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but I did not know, because I was doing some research for this podcast, and studying for the upcoming season on decoy use and stuff, and I didn't know they hunted the pronghorns out there like that, where they just get behind a decoy and kind of move in on the herd.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they use these horses. They walk out there with horses, and, because antelope doesn't know the difference. They've got 6 legs or 4, that type of a thing. And there's all kinds of little tricks they used to go and with an animal with such good eyes.
Right.
That's probably. But so that's going on. I got an elk out in Colorado right now, and but Boomer there from Transient, he's really been a great guy, and we've talked a lot, and it's been fun kind of just getting a prototype out there, and those guys, if you don't know who they are, follow them, Transient Outdoors. They got stuff on, website and stuff, some real quality, writings and stuff, and especially Western type stuff. And I'm really happy with what he's doing. It's really, really fun to have people involved with, because, people that have followed me know that this whole decoy sort of evolved, as we went along. So it's been, interesting getting everybody's input.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, is getting into the hunting community. Like, anybody who takes that leap in, it's like the people you meet along the way are great and always willing to help, and always, I've said it time and time again over this show. They're just great people, and you just want to go out and make trips to go out and meet them in person,
Yeah, for sure. I haven't met any decoy people yet myself.
So let's dive into that, talking about decoy setups a little bit further. Talk a little bit about what a general setup for when you're finding that spot to put your decoy. I know let's just stick to talking about the type of hunting 90% of the people are going to be who maybe get your decoy or deer decoy, the type of decoy they're going to be using in a field. What are some things that you would want to consider when you're picking your spot or picking your setup spot in that field?
Okay, it's going to be a little bit different for somebody maybe using a crossbow that's reaching out there, than so your yardage. But you don't want it having any farther than you could shoot for sure. And I would say closer to about 2/3. So if you're comfortable at 30 yards, bring it into 20. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to be you want to be upwind. I like being just a notch off upwind, not directly, up from thing. And if you're going to use any sense, I always like, that's off to the side, just a little bit. And I would lean it to the side. Let's just say you're going to have a gut feeling the deer's coming from the left. Okay, he's going to come out of the swamp, or that's your gut feeling. Okay, mm-hmm. The deer generally going to come from that direction. You want to have it so it's beyond. Okay, you. All right, so if he's coming from the left, you're going to have a little bit to the right. So if you're going to cheat it, so he's not directly upwind, but just a little bit off, but to the right, to the opposite of where you think the deer. So then the deer, as he comes to it, you see, he's going to come more right in front of you instead of coming up short on the other side.
That's right.
And generally, straight upwind, 2/3 of your shooting distance. And I like to look, when I set mine up, I love to look at being a circle. You make a circle around that decoy. So that extra, so let's say I'm a 30-yard shooter. I'm thinking 5 yards behind it and, like a circle around, because generally the deer is going to not come right up to the decoy. He's going to come up short and stop and look.
Right.
So you want that circle to be, your shots. You should be able to shoot all the way around that circle or think about it. So if you want to put them, a little bit, if you just think about that circle being where your shot's not shooting at the decoy, and think about more of a circle where he's going to stop up. And at least with my decoys, I'm seeing them, 5 yards, they stop and they look. I think that's about the time they figured out this thing is, and they're starting to study it, but that seems like when their eyes finally catch on, and they stop and stare and try to figure this thing out.
Now, as far as for maximum visibility in the field, if you have an elevation change in the field, are you looking to set up in the high or down low?
Yeah, you want to have, again, it's that visibility thing. So some of these, general rules, let's say you were, you were on a ridge. Okay. You want to keep that decoy up on the ridge if you can. You want them, again, to be visible. You don't want to hide them, it's either, or maybe, if you think two decoys, they're going to have that side, of course, where you think the deer are coming up out of the swamp, let's say. You just want to be able to, see it. So that's visibility to me makes, as long as the decoy's upwind of you, that's that right. Would be, the thing, sure.
One of the things that I've considered when for my placement of my decoy this year is I do have a piece of property that I've got a nice field on, and I've been going through and scouting every trail and plotting it on my plot map of that's entering the field all the way around it. So I know the potential of where deer are going to enter that field at, right? So as it gets closer, is I'm going to start. Actually, I should probably start doing it next week before this thing gets closer. Think about it. But I just go out and set my decoy up into where I can have the predominant wind in my face, and set it up in different areas along that field with the wind in my face. And then as I set it there, then I walk and see how visible it is from each of those trails coming out, and do that until I find the one spot on that field where I know that maximizes the amount of trails that can see that decoy and the wind still be in my face.
Yeah, that's because it is funny when you get a cry. There was the example when I was talking about that buck down in Ohio. Here's a little dip in this thing. You really couldn't see it until you were paying attention to it. And that could be the case, in so many fields. You're just that one little obvious, bush or whatever. And just like you say, trying to maximize that visibility-wise. But, if you can get them, they're going to be moving. And these bucks, like if you're talking maybe a little bit later in the season, they tend to skirt these fields. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily coming right up a trail and right out. They'll skirt that edge for, quite a ways and pick it up on some of those buck trails. They don't always follow, the main trail. And like wherever your blind is, if it's, I like having my blind just back. If I'm going to hunt a field, I still want to be back into I just call it the second growth.
Right.
I'm not, hanging right out. I'm hidden by extra vegetation. It's not even maybe part of my tree, that type of thing. I try to, they're not, you can't always do that. But, because to me, if, the deer can see a decoy, it's not that hard, especially distance. When you're distance, that height in your tree becomes less. It's great to be 20 feet in a tree, but from 100 yards away, it doesn't look like it doesn't look like you're that far, and you have to remember that, because if you got the decoy close to you, and you just have to remember that, it might be focusing on it, but it doesn't take a whole lot of movement to get them right back on you.
That's a very valid point. That's something I hadn't considered, so that's a good little tidbit there. What about scent precautions? Do you have any scent precautions that you would suggest people to use on your decoys? Because I would imagine you want to keep them as little bit of human scent on them as possible.
Yeah, that's for sure. You're gonna handle them with your gloves, and I tend to leave my decoys outside. I just leave them, people look at my decoys and think some of the weather's going to get them or something, but I leave them outside for one thing. I just think they're better off just as far as storing them goes. Just leave them outside somewhere. That helps a tremendous amount. Sun, everything just does tremendous, whatever really helps on that. And they're not picking up from what's in your garage, what's in your house. Just keeping them outside for one thing. I think that does more than probably anything that help them be. And, you can hit them with your scent, whatever, you're using to kill your scent with. And, I don't go crazy with it. And, scent, I've had people that, put them right on it and cause they just think that's the ticket, but I don't think it is down the road, literally driving down the road afterwards when you're sending, it's, anything like that. You want to use some sort of scent, tab, something, and anything pad or something, or just use the ground, like that. But yeah, keeping that, and I'm big on, the tallest rubber boots. When I'm right here at my house, I tend to use neoprene waders just because they're dry and comfortable, and I'm not walking very far. I like going out like that. I just think it's a great way to keep the scent down, and it is a concern. It certainly is. But in this situation, when you have this deer coming in and he's focused on your decoy, I want to try another product now. I do want to try the Evercalm product, just because I think that's a reasonable, makes sense product for a decoy. I do want to try. I haven't tried it yet, but I am going to be trying it this year just because it's a comfort thing. So, as that scent goes, because that's what Evercalm's all about. It's basically, where, it's the type of thing where you're just, you're just calming them down. I'm going to try it, I guess.
All right, well, let's, since we started talking about scents, let's get into the phases that we're going to be using these decoys in, and kind of touch a little bit on how we're going to hunt each phase of the season, because that's going to bring us into the scents part. So let's start with early season just opening off. What's going to be your most best way to use that decoy, and probably the best method as far as to be successful in early season?
Well, early season, you're going to be out there and you're still going to be in that summer pattern, and your trail cams and all the food plots and everything should be holding pretty true in the earliest part of the season there. You can use either a doe or a small buck in that situation, but I recommend a doe. You might get a buck that's just curious, but your chances of seeing the big buck in the fields early on is probably not as good as you're going to be over closer to the bedding areas, or in that route in between. So if you're going to use it out in the field, you're going to want to use a doe. Depends on what you're hunting for.
Right.
Everybody's going to be different. You want to get that early doe. It's a great way to do it, because usually the oldest doe, when does come out and they do finally come over to kind of check it out, usually after they're done eating a little bit, it'll be the oldest doe will come over, and if that's the one you want to take, then that's your best shot there. So, as far as field hunting, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking of, using that the Doe Decoy right off the bat for the season. That's going to be the meat getter right there. You can get meat in the freezer I wouldn't say easily, but quickly. If you got a lot of deer on the property and you're just hunting it in an evening, and you're just trying to get those does to your patch of that field with enough shooting light in, that's a great option to look at because like I said, I haven't been fortunate enough to hunt over a decoy yet, but I've heard stories of people complaining that using a doe decoy in the field brings in too many does. That can happen. There's no question that it can bring in a lot of does, but it also, at the same time, that doe that you didn't want to take might come over and get a little bit, jumpy about, they eventually make contact with your decoy. They're probably going to blow it off, right?
Eventually. So, if that's your goal, then it all depends, on what you are hunting for. Probably if, it's not, probably the best scenario for getting the big buck early. So, that's what depends on what you're hunting for.
Right. That's not gonna be, like you said, the go-to strategy for putting in that monster buck in the early season. But I mean, you don't know. You could be out there, have your decoy out there, get about 4 does milling around it, and then all of a sudden Mr. Big decides he's going to step out in the field because he feels safe, and then he wouldn't be because of the decoy, but it just made all the other deer feel comfortable. I mean, you don't know. It could work out that way.
He might be hungry too. He just wanted to come out and have some food, so they're just, more reluctant to come out. But, if you're bringing out does a little bit earlier, maybe he's used to just kind of following the does out. Maybe that's enough. It might happen. Deer are deer. I
do think, though, that if you are using that to get a doe down early, and you've got the decoy out there, and you're getting a group of does working their way down closer to your decoy, I would think you'd probably want to take the first shot opportunity you get, because once a mature duck sees your decoy or notices that it's a decoy and something's not right, and she starts blowing and stomping her feet, and it's all over. They're all going to take off.
That's right, and I have had it. I had it where I've been able to actually call them back even after they snorted at it. They really, they have a hard time putting their head around it. Decoy. It isn't, they just haven't something they haven't seen before probably, and so sometimes it takes them a while to figure out, especially younger, just a nice, 2.5-year-old doe. It takes them a while. They don't figure it out right away, So if that's the case, then I think you might get a shot at a smaller buck if that's what you're hunting for too. That can happen. These. I really, I'm a believer that our season's October 1st. So as every day, the deer seem to change a little bit. And these younger bucks get a little more antsier than the older bucks do.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to get a nice basket 8 or something like that, if that's the deer you want to get, then sometimes that's just enough, because that might be the only deer in the area that day.
That's right. I mean, it's all about getting down what you, what's a trophy to you. What's a trophy to somebody may not be a trophy to others, but I mean, if it's a trophy in your book, then by all means let that arrow fly and enjoy every minute of it.
Absolutely, because I know in Michigan here, we're having a tough time getting racks in general, public areas and stuff like that. The up north hunting's been down in decline. It's just been tough to, there's a lot of good pockets of deer in the state. But it's tough to get, real big trophies and stuff. I know, and I put it out there on Twitter when I was doing my decoy. I was, putting a few different antlers out there saying, what do you guys think about this size antlers and everything? It's something that's a little tough about designing the whole decoy. How big an antler do I want? Because antler size on a decoy is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to intimidate every deer out there, but, on the other side of the coin, you don't want to have something that, a smaller buck, at least now this bigger buck will come into that, but if you have a big decoy buck, it's going to scare a smaller one away.
That's right.
So it can go either way, and antler size is probably dictated more by what you know about your area. The bucks in your area is probably the most important thing you probably should gather or try to figure out before you put that decoy out there.
That's a very good point. I mean, you don't want to, like you said, when you're putting this out there, you want to maximize your chances. You hate to make a wrong move by having either too small or too big of antlers. And I don't know what's right. Like you said, it all comes down to your area and maybe trial and error too. It may take you a few seasons to figure out the zone you need to be in. Absolutely.
I think it was Brian Lear. He won the one buck, and I sent him 3 sets of antlers. I did this kind of as an experiment. There you go. There's 3 different sizes, Let's see what happens with that, So it is, a lot on that. You do want to have a subordinate buck, in a lot of situations there, because the biggest deer don't tend to come out until, or at least during daylight hours and your best hunting, that's till we get closer to the rut. The bigger deer will come out more readily.
That's right. Well, since we're talking about big deer, we're talking about antlers, we know what we all want those antlers for, and we're going to get into that's for your pre-rut stage. So let's talk about hunting the pre-rut with a decoy.
Well, you can do a lot of reading on, on what different people really, look at the pre-rut as, but I do see it as probably the most exciting time. The deer aren't preoccupied with, seeking the does. It's almost like they're taking inventory out there.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the move, and they're looking around to see what's around with the bucks, what's around with the does. They're busted up from their bachelor groups now, and there's kind of a difference between early pre-rut and later pre-rut and all these other variables, the weather, the crops, and all these things come into play. But one thing is kind of for sure, they're moving.
That's right.
They are moving around, maybe they're changing their location to their fall patterns and everything. And so, but that means they're moving around a little bit. And that's a great time to decoy. It's just because anytime they want to see what's in their area, what is in their newer area, or, maybe it's an area they're familiar with, but they haven't been there in a while. So they're taking it just seems like they're inventory, and they're so healthy. They're not run down yet from running so much. It's just a great time to be decoying because they're interested, in what's going on.
Yeah, that pre-rut, those deer, their testosterone's starting to rise a little bit. They're starting to feel it in the air. They're starting to become a little bit more territorial, starting to test each other out a little bit. They're more on the awareness or lookout for newer competition moving into the area. I mean, I think all those things, if you use that, can play into your favor for hunting the pre-rut if you use that mindset of that's what those deer are going through at that time.
Yeah, in the weather, it's just we see so many different weather patterns, and and to me, probably one of the biggest is the leaves coming down. You're kind of right, you're right into that time when the leaves are falling, at least in my area,
Mm-hmm.
That's when and when you talk about the lull, and, a lot of the lull is just deer are on the move. They change their areas. They move their different things. The leaves are down, so their cover changes. You get some storms that, I've noticed around the golf course, you get a storm and all the deer come in after the acorn. They know when a storm knocked all them acorns.
That's right, yeah.
So, they're right on them, and all these other factors. And it can change, the guy just took down that 100 acres of corn. Well, where the deer all go now, and so, all that stuff. And, I've seen one other thing that in that time frame, and I've never read about it, but I just know it, and really twice, but you get that change or that lull time. And I've seen it where it seems like every deer in the woods are together. I mean, it's just a group of bucks and does, and it's over at the golf course. I don't think I've ever seen more than about 4 or 5 deer together, and here's 15 deer together one day,
mm-hmm.
right during that time. It's almost like they're just, taking inventory on themselves. They all kind of get together. I don't know if that's really true, but I just think that as they cross paths, they tend to do different things, and that's why we get into this lull, because they just change so much. They might go bed down in this 1 10-acre thing. The rest of the time, they're never around that ever again. So it can be that way. But to me, if you're going to decoy during pre-rut, a small buck is a good way to go, because if it's a bigger buck you're looking for, he's going to come in. And he's going to want it, because them bachelor groups are broke out, especially in the later part of the pre-rut.
I guess I should have been more specific. Like pre-rut, what I'm considering would be like your 2 weeks before peak rut. Like, they're fired up, their testosterone's up. Not necessarily the October lull, more when you're talking 2 weeks out before Halloween or a week before Halloween. It's getting ready to gear up over the next 2 weeks. That's what I'm considering to be pre-rut. And like you said, I think your the Buff Decoy is obviously going to be the way to go there.
Yeah, that's just in a smaller buck, because probably the nice bucks are out there going around there. Now it depends on what you're looking for, but the biggest of the big, they don't really get up and do a lot on the foot until they're right into that rut, or right close to chasing, right there. seeking and chasing and right, these does are heat, they're not red or anything like that. But it's right there. The closer you get, it just seems like that's the whole thing. And the closer you get to rut, the more bigger chance you got for the bigger buck. That's what we're all waiting for, right?
Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about how I'm planning on using the decoy you sent me for the pre-rut this season. Kind of a little strategy that I've put together that I'm planning on doing is I'm going to get some, if I know from a friend of a friend of a friend, a guy who can get his hands on some nice fresh deer urine, If you don't have that kind of luxury, I think like Code Blue makes some good one where I'm just looking for where I know that I'm getting one deer bottled in that bottle, which I think that's how Code Blue advertises. I don't know how true it is, but supposedly it's one deer per bottle. But you get that, and you want to get a rutting buck. And my goal is I want to get out probably, let's say I'm 2 weeks out of peak rut. I want to get out 2 weeks before peak rut and make me a mock scrape and put some of that rutting buck urine into my scrape. So what that's going to do is over that next week, I'm going to get several bucks hitting that scrape, and they're going to smell it, and they're going to say, oh, there's somebody new in here. Who is this guy? Where'd he come from? And kind of get them on a little higher alert. Their testosterone's already rising anyway because the rut's approaching closer. After that sitting out there for a week, then I plan on getting in the stand and putting out the buck decoy with that same bottle of urine, so that it symbolizes the same deer, getting that on a scent cloth or a scent towel or a wafer. Obviously you don't want to put it on your decoy like we touched on earlier. And then getting up in a tree and rattling some antlers, grunting on some calls and crossing my fingers and hoping that I got somebody riled up enough over the last week, and hopefully they come in and check out what's going on and see them and put a nose to it and just come in and tear down your decoy.
Yeah, if they're hitting on that mock scrape, so I'm looking at that scenario is I would say, okay, your mock scrape's way upwind. Your decoy is in that position, that 20-yard position, but that mock scrape can be out there a little ways. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't put it right next to it or anything.
No. I'm not planning on hunting over the mock scrape. It's just the mock scrape's going to be in the woods that I'm hunting, so that way they know there's something new in their area.
Yeah, they just also will, when they come and check them mock scrapes, they're going to swing downwind of that. They're not necessarily going to come to the mock scrape. Mm-hmm. So, they like coming in downwind of it, and that's about the time you'd want them running into your decoy. And so then he sees your decoy. Now he's even going to go a little more downwind and be right in front of you. That would be the hope in that situation. But, so I would, if you're working a field, you could have that mock scrape, 80 yards straight across on the other side of that, area. I don't know how big an area, but, that you could have it quite a ways out there if you got some visibility for that decoy. Because they just like to swing around those mock scrapes, and they'll check them from downwind. They don't have to go necessarily right to them. Mm-hmm. And although they do like to come through there in those areas where there's a little bit more cover, but they just like to wander. I had a great scenario with one. I don't know, about 5 years ago. I had one between my son and I, and this beautiful big old 7-point. He swung, about 40 yards, and I'm not out that range. He went right towards my son. Now we had this right between us, but that deer just casually strolled, and he's just looking at that. He's looking right at it, that general area, but he just swung. And he went over by my son, and my son never saw him. He turned around, he came back, looking again, just kind of, but not going to it. Mm-hmm. They don't go to it necessarily, in that situation. So you got a lot of room there, in my opinion. You just got a lot of room, between that mock scrape and where you're at. And you think about him wandering just downwind of it, make that setup, and hopefully he'll run into your decoy.
Yeah, that would be the goal. I just want to get them. I know that you want to be as as less intrusive as possible, when you're hunting in the woods, obviously. So it's a little bit of a gamble when you're going in there and you're talking about making mock scrapes and doing some intrusion into the woods, that close to rut. But I don't know. I just something I want to try. I want to try to set up a situation where they think that the way they get pissed off that somebody's moving into their bedroom or somebody's in their area that close to the rut, and just get them in a fit of rage. So.
Well, them big boys will come in there and just as calm as could be, just kind of look around, but the decoy could get them riled up more than the scent, to me. And I've told you this before, that I hadn't used a lot of scents in my decoys just because as I developed them, I wanted them to go on their own merits. I didn't want to say, oh, it was the scent, or oh, it was that, and still I'm kind of that way, at least as far as if I'm just going to put a decoy out, I'm not necessarily, and I really absolutely agree with you on the one deer, scent. Absolutely. 'Cause there's just no question. When I've watched deer come up to my deer, they stand there, they're looking at it, but they're smelling. They're not like smellers, but like a dog smells butts, to identify dogs, that's how they do that, right? Okay, well, deer don't do that. They can just stand there at 10 yards and smell the deer and know what deer it is. That's just what it is. And there's just no question about that. So I've seen them come up and try to get that sense. And I'm one that I don't want to give up that scent. I want them to stand there for a minute and thinking, well, there's really no wind, but I'll smell it here in a second, and give it that extra curiosity, not really, at least as far as, I'm not talking peak rut here or something with estrus, but just generally, I'm not generally going to use this scent, as a rule.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. You developed the decoy and you want to use it for its merits. I get that, but to me, I think it's like you're using the gun without the bullets. I think your decoy is great. I think that the paired with a nice scent, I think is just because, when we hunt, when we're in a stand, what are we trying to do? We're trying to fool that deer by covering up in camo. We're trying to fool his sight. We're trying to cover our scent. We're trying to fool his nose. And we're trying to stay still and be quiet to fool his ears, right? We're trying to fool all three of those things. I think we have to take that same approach when you're decoying. You got the decoy, which you're trying to fool him visually. You're trying to fool his sight. And then you need to throw in a little bit of smell so you can fool his nose. You can trick, because, they're going to realize you got to fool more than one sense in a lot of these cases. And then the third thing is you want to fool his ears by throwing out, having your calls. You got a doe out there, doe bleat, or a grunt here and there, or rattling some antlers. All three of those things combined is your odds are going to get better as long as you don't overdo it. Like with sand, I think it can be overdone. You pour too much scent, you're rattling all the time. But moderately combine those three things in a perfect orchestra of sorts. Can pay off.
Yeah, I think, again, I disagree with you on that one deer scent, because I really believe they can identify one deer, and some of these other scents aren't that way, and it may put the alarm up right away. This isn't what I bought into, so right. They can go either way. And I like, like you say, a friend of a friend of a friend, the underground deer mafia, apparently. Just these things, I don't know. But, generally at Myers, they just don't sell the one deer sense of your average guy. But yeah. I know you got...
I'm talking the guy I know. the guy I know goes, like the friend of the friend of a friend is actually hand on the buck's penis. Into the box.
That's right. And right direct.
Yes.
That's right. So, but I do believe that. I do believe that, deer, pick up, they know that, this doe scent, that doe scent, they recognize them by the scents. They got more acute smell than a dog does. And, we all know how unbelievable that is. And, they can pick up on, and I just think they can smell from 10 feet away who that guy is, who that deer is. And so these real quality scents, I'm just not familiar with the real good quality like you're talking there.
Yeah,
but I would believe in that for sure.
Supposedly, that's Code Blue. That's their big selling point, is they say that they're one deer, one per bottle. But like I said, they're a huge company, and they sell in all the big chains. I'm not sure how they can keep that up with as many bottles as they're bottling, but that's what they claim. So if you're going to use one of those off the shelves, I'm guessing they would be the ones to go. They're not a sponsor of the show or anything, so that's just from my own personal opinion that I've used it and had some success with them.
Yeah, I've used that, different things for the mock scrape. I think that's a great way to go. If you're gonna, set a decoy, also I wouldn't necessarily. Again, I wouldn't go real close to it. I would think about how that buck's gonna swing around and come into that mock scrape. If that's especially if you got them on trail cam, they're doing it regularly. You got a pretty good plan,
Now let's move our focus a little bit to the rut. And I believe with the rut, our strategy can change a little, but it doesn't have to. I feel like you could probably get away with hunting the rut the same way you are pre-rut. I think you could do that with the Buff Decoy and have just as good a success as you would have had in pre-rut.
Yeah, I think in this situation, you're more likely you would want to use the Buck Doe combo is really, a great, that's just the most likely combination you're going to see, and again, you're going to go, this antler size thing is a huge thing, no question about it. Hard to put your finger on it, on what size, and where you're at. But there's also, the laying doe, the buck with the laying doe where she's just not ready, and he's just waiting. And if somebody thinks he can bully in, you might do that, but that's with the laying doe and the buck, combo is great where, if you're going to do two, in pre-rut, you'd leave them both standing type thing. They're together. But, in this situation, she's just reluctant to breed yet. In other words, she's not been bred yet. And if somebody thinks he can bully in, here he comes.
Yeah, that's a good point with the buck and the doe together. Especially to have one laying down and maybe have the buck in a more posturing position.
Yeah, that's, she's just going to lay down. A lot of that, these does will just lay down. It's just because this, persistent buck is not ready yet. And that's where, if somebody thinks he can, and antler size is huge. I mean, a couple things about that. You can, if you want to show a little bit of weakness in your, buck, pull an antler off if you can, use one antler. That's a sign of weakness, something that, certainly makes the buck look weaker than your target buck might be is, it's a great way to get him to come in and try to bully his way.
But even, I guess that's why I was kind of getting at, even if you don't have the two decoys and you still just have your buck decoy, I guess I just want to encourage people that you don't have to feel like you have to put that up as rut starting because, I've definitely heard stories of, bucks dogging on a doe, chasing them down a trail, and all of a sudden they see that other buck and it's able to pull them off of a hot doe because, they're wanting to protect what they got and they see it as a challenger and they're just full focus.
Yeah, it can go a lot of different directions there. But generally, you're not going to pull that buck off a doe. If he's dogging her and if he's really dogging her and she's close, then he's not going to leave. Especially a decoy, he doesn't seem to be quite as intimidating to him, Probably if he was just happen to go by. I would think if of course a doe is fine. In reality, at the end of the day, that peak rut is a tough time to hunt.
You think so?
Because these bucks are locked down. Oh, certainly. These bucks are locked up, but, it can be a tough time to hunt because a buck is locked down with a doe. And they'll follow them until they're ready to be bred, so they'll stand for them, and that can just time out. And his next doe that he goes in to breed might just be the other side of the field, and now he's with her for a while. So he has to move far, and he's breeding 2 does, and, you know, it might not be that way. It might be that way. Depends on that, you know, buck-doe ratio.
Yeah, I mean, but they're not just following your doe. They have, I mean, normally if there's 3 or 4 in tail, they're fighting the entire time. They are going.
It can be that way. You know, I've seen, I've seen these, just groups of bucks be on a hot doe. I mean, it's like the bachelor group didn't break up in the middle of November.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that can happen, and they're not necessarily all fighting. You know, I've seen it right where I work. Big hill out there. One morning, we go out there, and here's this hot doe, and there's 7 bucks on her.
Yeah, but I guess
it can happen that way.
We could probably agree, though, that you're probably more likely to get to pull a buck off of a hot doe with a buck over symbolizing another hot doe. Like, I don't think it's going to pull
absolutely.
He's already on to go to another one. But as far as maybe keeping another buck off, I think you're more likely to pull him off with a buck as opposed to putting a doe out with estrus. Even though that's kind of what I thought going into this was, we were going to put out a Doe decoy with estrus during peak rut. But when you actually stop and think about it and do your research, well, really, if you got a buck trailing a hot doe, he's not going to come off of it for another doe. He will for another.
No, and it's hard. It can happen that way. But you haven't necessarily attracted him to him, and it just depends on where she's at, you know, and how if he's right on her, he's got what he wants. He's not even hardly paying attention to the rest of the world. From you know, they was walking and follow her wherever she'll go. You know, so they're not even hardly paying attention. But in the other scenario, if you have a buck and a doe decoy out and he wants to come and steal that doe, that's probably the more likely in that situation. But, you know, you're right. But you might say also that this doe, if he is not with a hot doe, he's looking for one. Mm-hmm. He knows they're out there. The woods are alive. You got a doe decoy out there, and he isn't with one. You got a great buck-doe ratio out there. He's on your decoy.
Yeah, so I guess
it can happen that way as well. So,
thing to think about with a rut is just have fun with it, because, you know, it can go a few different ways. And, you know, I mean, hunting in the rut is a fun time anyway, but combining it with the use of a decoy and putting yourself in those types of situations, it sounds like a blast in the woods. I can't wait to try it regardless of the outcome.
It is. Any decoying is a lot of fun, but that rut is a different thing. But to me, you know, to me, it's pre-rut. That's my favorite time for the decoy. I find, you know, a lot of times, it depends on how that season falls and how that rut falls. You know, if it's a little bit later, the weather's kind of screwy, it turns into gun season a lot of times. You know, and that changes the whole dramatic too, you know.
Yes, it does.
You know, it can, you know, so that I don't know how it is in Ohio, but, you know, we're the 15th of November. It's, you know, usually 6th to the 11th around here is probably peak, you know. It just depends on the year, though. It does vary, weather, you know, moon phase, whatever you want to call it. But I like my favorite time. I mean, really, if I was to go one day a year, I'd go on Halloween.
Halloween.
I would go deer hunting with a decoy, and Halloween. Absolutely. It's a great day to hunt.
Yeah.
It's a great day. And I like, so the week surrounding that, if I had a week to take off, that would be the week. It just seems like, you know, the bucks are really active, and just every day is a little bit stronger. But, you know, when you have does that are receptive, the woods change. There's just no question about it. They just do. They're really, you know, they're out on the move, but they're also, that's when they're breeding. And when they're breeding all the does in town, it can be a little more difficult, or it can be great. You know, it just depends. If you're over that good doe area, you've been scouting all year and you know all the does are in there, you'll probably have great success.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk a little bit. I know we're getting kind of short on time here, so we'll try to move through this last little bit. Post-rut, how are we? I would imagine post-rut, we're kind of hunting that. I would think probably what the best with post-rut, you're probably putting up your antlers, I would say, aren't you?
Yeah, we're going back to feeding again. It's almost like back to where we were.
Mm-hmm.
You might, probably, it depends on if you're still in that, like, we tend to get, that second rut there it kind of coincides with our muzzleloader season, which is about the 10th or so of December.
Right.
So you get some action where, so a Doe Decoy might, the straggler that didn't get bred.
Right.
That could be. But you're also getting back to the field, wherever the food plots are, especially if you got a food plot down, that that's where they're going to be. You guys know that.
Yeah, I think you're, like you said, with the timing it around with post-rut, timing around where the second estrus starts coming on the does who didn't get bred, putting out a decoy with some maybe some estrus in on it. That may be the time to do that. Because I don't think at least not to my knowledge, at that stage isn't as violent and as much battles goes on for those does as they do during the peak rut. So
no, that's true. There's a lot of dead bucks by then.
Right.
That's another thing that goes on. You're late, but that's when some of the biggest bucks are killed too. In the colder weather, and they're just out and you get a chance at them because they are it's colder weather. They're feeding a little bit more. They're feeding during the day a little more. It's a great time to, get a big deer if you got the place to do it, and then they maybe got eluded till that point. And that's finally when you get them.
Yeah. And then, last but not least, late season. We're talking the season's wrapping up. It's winter. It's freaking cold out. All the rut's over. We're resorting all the way back to where we were at the beginning, right? Just putting a doe decoy in the field, hoping to draw some gathering does to it, and putting that last bit of meat in the freezer.
Yeah, that's we start losing. It's like ours goes to January 1st, and by then our bucks are dropping their antlers and a lot of strange things. But you also see groups of does. Then sometimes you can pattern them pretty good, that type of thing. But one thing about groups of does and decoys, been my experience where they won't. Generally a bigger group on, 7 to 9, maybe deer or something like that. And you get a lot of that time of year. They don't tend to come into a decoy. They'll stand off. They'll look at it.
And they want the decoy to come to it.
Fighting and it's coming to, you come to me. We're not 9 of us ain't coming to you. You can come on over to us. That sort of thing going on, So to me, it's a little bit different, but I'm not saying it will work. It's just off. It's always when you put a decoy generally in a field, it tells other deer that it's okay to come out because there's a deer killing the field, So I might bring that group out that wouldn't have come out otherwise.
That's right. You may bring them out with just a little bit of daylight left for you to get a shot off. Especially once those deer have been pressured hard all season. They're going mostly nocturnal, or they're trying to wait to the very last minute to get in that field. You may just be that last little bit of encouragement in late season to get them out and get them in front of you.
Yeah, and get that fawn call out and shoot yourself a coyote. That's probably get your coyote that time of year on your decoy.
Or we all learned, or what we all learned on last week's podcast with Jake and Steve Wright. Get out and start doing some trapping.
Absolutely, boy, oh boy. And again, that's all I have on my trail cam is coyote. So I'm just, I'm hoping that wasn't too, I had a couple of sort of, I don't want to call it a poaching thing, but it's close to it, to the south of me last year. So I think it affected my hunting here quite a bit. So, but on the my other spot, the poaching scene's gone over there that I've heard about. One good spot, one bad spot.
A lot of poaching going on up there in Michigan. Dirty Michigan.
I don't know about, I just, they get liberal with these doe permits, and I'm just, a guy takes 6 or 7 does, that gets a little bit much sometimes,
right?
When he's a single guy, I don't get that all the time, just that's too much to me, I'm not calling it poaching, but it's sort of like, let's be reasonable, everybody gets their share of the deer, but sometimes, in these smaller areas, especially if you're in these, smaller areas that, there's just not a lot of deer to begin with, to take, that many is too much.
Yeah, I remember Casey Crispin was on the show a couple months ago, and he lives up in Michigan, and he was talking about guys that he knew in his area that took 100 does in a year.
So there's places where that's, gonna happen. There's places where they should at least take half of those.
It's legal, but
our buck doe population's off, and there's other things where you have the urban sprawl, and then there's just too many deer for that, so they put a whole lot of doe permits in those areas, and then up north where you got all the Grandeur woods and everything like that, they can't seem to get them going. I don't know if those people did all the poaching or not. I don't know,
Yeah,
but there's pockets of great hunting in this state for sure, and I just looking forward to it. I don't know. I got a couple of does I've been looking at. I posted a couple of twins on Twitter there. The fawns look good, so I'm going by the best looking fawns. Their mother's my target for this weekend. We got a 2-day firearm doe season, so the best looking fawns, their mother gets shot.
Oh, you got a 2-day firearm season to start it off?
Yeah, the 2-day firearm season.
Wow,
to start it off.
All right, well, let's wrap this thing up with a Cowboy Coffee Chew fan question. Are you ready?
Yeah, I've been waiting for these questions. It was just your whole fan question thing was a great idea, Jason.
Yeah, I did really good thinking of that, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. It was, yeah. No, it was not. It was your idea. It was a great one. I think it gets a lot of good chatter going. It's the questions sometimes. See, if you notice on Twitter, I didn't answer the questions. I was just my usual smart ass.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was glad you got a couple questions anyways.
Well, I think you already answered this one on the show at some point, but we'll go ahead and give the Tom at holler_crawler. We'll give him some Cowboy Coffee Chew sent out to him for submitting this question, even though I believe you already answered it, but let's just ask it for shits and giggles. What's the best time of the season to decoy? Pre-rut, mid-rut, I think he means peak rut, or post-rut?
Yeah, see, and I will just say pre-rut for sure, just for this reason. First of all, you're still in the bow season like I am here, but them bucks are up and they're moving. They travel quite a bit during that time, and that's decoys that you want them bumping into your decoys. That's just a great thing. If they're in the rut, I think a lot of times they're preoccupied with the does, and then post. There's a lot of deer been killed, so I always say I'd rather be looking at them than looking for them. So
there you go.
I'd rather take my chance with the earlier season. I think there's more deer left then, so that's how, but that just seems like a great time. The curiosity's there, their inventory, and they're moving, all those things. And I think, you come out of it in that pre-rut also, you've come out of this, what a lot of people, is this lull, and they're moving into that fall pattern. It's a great time. They are looking at everything in their areas, they're not so complacent as they might have been, this summer back and forth. So they're looking around, they're really alert, they're on the move, and they're just starting to get that going, so.
Oh yeah, it's a great time to be in.
But the one thing I wouldn't do though, I wouldn't go real heavy with the calls and the rattling until like later in that pre-rut. Not so early, but later, then you can get a little more aggressive for the call, because you put that stuff together, calls, rattling, and a decoy, that's a combination.
Could be a deadly combination.
I like to think so.
All right. Well,
hey, if anything with decoying, you got to be ready. Decoying is fast action. Fast action. You want to be ready.
So do I stand at full draw the entire time?
Well, I know you could do that, Jason, and a couple others, could stand there all day, full draw,
The only time I'm at full draw all day, the only time I can be at full draw all day is if I'm shooting a crossbow.
Yeah, there you go. That's how, it is. But most of us still aren't using them, but there's plenty of people that are. And I just, one thing about decoying too is, like I was talking earlier about keeping still across the field. You're a lot smaller, different, type of thing. And if you think about it, that whole being ready and everything like that, that's something you want to really, make sure you're ready for a quick draw. If you think about it and practice it, because that's something that could very well be the difference in getting the deer knot.
That's right. You gotta be practicing that quick draw. Be able to be on sight. Have your sights on target right when you pull up, and be ready to release immediately. Be comfortable doing that.
I think so.
All right. You got any final thoughts to wrap? Go ahead.
Well, I want to thank you, Jason. I enjoyed doing this. Anything this is all my own thoughts generally, but, take the decoy you got, the other thing about them is set them up. Set them, if you got one of my decoys, set the thing up, get used to it and the wind and everything like that. Whatever decoy you might have, think about some of the stuff we said, and especially the wind. I'm just really huge on the wind. Make sure you got that. And when you're out there hunting, if, that wind dies off or switches around or starts swirling on you, it's time to give it up. You do not want your scent involved with that decoy, for sure. So I'm real big on that. That's my biggest thing.
All right, I guess my little bit of final thought here would be to just let everybody know out there, it's just going to sound like a stupid tip, but don't leave your damn decoy at home. I know, a lot of people probably get these decoys, and they go out there, and they use them one time in the field, and act like, well, it didn't work, and just leave it in their shed the rest of to collect dust. It's like, this isn't a quick solution. It isn't a guaranteed solution. It's just another method of hunting, and you're not gonna have success over it unless you're actually carrying it with you to the field and waiting for the situations and using it in the right situation. I'm not saying use it every time, but when the situation calls for it, get the damn decoy out and give it a shot. You're not going to shoot one over it by not having it. So
I'll give you one more scenario that can work for everybody. If you got a two-man deal, if you got two of you, where you got one guy up in a blind and one guy downwind a ways, and then you get your decoy in its normal spot. Try doing some real aggressive rattling and grunting. And I've gone as far as we'll take a 6-foot stick, piece of oak, and we'll hide the one guy. He's on the ground. We're kind of hide him a little bit in the low area, whatever, in the woods, just kind of hide him. But he's making more noise. He's obviously trying to simulate a buck fight, but actually, it seems crazy to take and beat a stick on the ground that hard and make that much noise, and, maybe 2 minutes like that, and then 5 minutes and nothing, a couple minutes like that. It's amazing some of the action you can get going with that. And if you can get that decoy, again, that's just typically what's going to happen is these deer, if you just think about that set, you're in the blind, your decoy's out there 20 yards, that deer should come between you and that decoy. That's the whole idea, so you get that good broadside shot. So if this guy's beating the stick behind you, it just can really, really enhance that whole thing. And, we've done that, and it's just amazing how that will work.
That's something else I haven't thought of. Maybe I have to put Jake on the ground when I go up to Wisconsin this year and have him beat the ground for me.
You guys stay up there and just get Steve Miller over there. He'll do that.
Oh shit!
He'll do that job.
I don't want Steve Miller anywhere around me. I'm just joking. Some of his posts scare me.
I just want everybody to get, enjoy decoying, and I'll tell you one other thing. If you're interested in my decoys a little bit, give me a DM. I got some last year's models. I got this, and I got some seconds. Let's get these things out in the woods this year and, see what they're all about. It's been my whole goal for this year, basically, to, get it in hunters' hands. And, I got to make some good deals on some whatevers, and, I understand money's short and that, but I do have some stuff like that, and just as effective, just a little bit different features maybe. But I just got some stuff around too to, I just want to get it out there. And,
so that's
see what happens.
On Twitter. They can DM you at Steve Hinson, HINSON 5. Did I have that right?
Correct.
Got it right. That's perfect. Off the top of my head too. That's good.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Well, you can also check out your website, www.deerdecoy.org. You can buy some decoys on there and check out the videos of it.
Yeah, we got free shipping going on right now, so you can get some free shipping.
All right, buddy.
At least the end of the month here, so.
Well, you have a great season. I'll be looking forward to following it. Hope you shoot a monster this year, and I hope I get some video of at least some deer around one of your decoys this season. So I'll be definitely trying to have that happen for you this season.
All right, Jason, man. Thanks a lot. And we're taping this here on 9/11, and just let everybody know, we're thinking about people in Texas, the people in Florida, the history of 9/11 today, and how much that all means to us. And us, we are to be able to sit here and talk about this stuff with people going through what they're going through right now. So we're lucky men, gentlemen.
That's right, man. That's well said. We're very lucky to be able to just sit and just talk about hunting when people's whole worlds are falling apart right now. So,
absolutely. You take care.
All right, buddy. We will talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye. All right, guys, that's it. That's the show. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Steve Hinson from Sentinel Decoys for coming on and sharing his decoy knowledge. I hope you guys picked up a lot, and I hope it gave you some confidence to get those decoys out and use them this season. On the Thursday show, field host Jerry Roberts sits down with Jeremy Coburn to talk about black bear hunting. It's a great episode, so you guys be looking forward to that. Once again, to support the show, go to www.IHUNTpodcast.com. Use the Amazon link at the top of the page for all your Amazon purchases. All right, guys, that's it. That's the show. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for sharing the show. Thanks for liking it. Thanks for subscribing and leaving those reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. That's it. We will see you guys on Thursday. Take care. Love you. Bye.